No chocolate knocks.
What kind of show is this?
It's a white chocolate.
It's a white man show.
It's a white chocolate extravaganza.
We're starting to look like a panel at Shepherd's Conference.
I was going to say a revoice. No?
Where's my volume?
Probably that
We're
too.
going to talk about Hunger Games 2020. Need a little more volume here? I got it. There we go.
Okay.
Yes. And we got Michael Dougherty coming on the show from National Review. I'm excited about getting him on the show. There's kind of a little fight.
Oh, it's like an intramural conservative food fight.
Yeah, National Review fight and everything.
In-house.
As
In-house.
you guys
Maybe
can see,
pillow fight.
we got
In-house.
Pastor Wilson on the show.
Hi.
Darren Doan, director
Hey,
Darren Doan.
I'm here.
Of course, Pastor Toby, Gabe, and No Knocks.
Oh, man.
No Knocks. It's a hard knocks life.
Knox, I did not know you were gone. Why are we doing this? Where are you? Where have you gone?
Yeah.
What did you do to him?
Well, so Knox had to go on a trip and actually do work and make real money. Yeah.
The nerve.
Yeah, seriously.
The nerve.
So if somebody would like to underwrite him,
Yes.
if you want to see him back,
exactly.
if you want to see him back on the show,
Join the club. There we go.
Make her check out the cross politics.
That's very so. Hey, we had a friend, Jerome, send us some books.
Is that right?
Here. And see those little kid books?
Okay.
One's for you, one's for Knox. And I already got mine. My kids, Jerome sent it to us last night, and my kids immediately wanted to read it. So we read it for the little bedtime. It's a bedtime kind of poem on fighting pirates with
Pillow
pillows.
fighting pirates.
Yeah, it was good. So thanks,
Great
Jerome.
name.
We'll send a link out actually to that book because Jerome just gave it to us. So I think we need to send a link out to it. So
Okay, we'll send it now.
how smart is that? Though, like people are finally realizing, like, give stuff away for free.
and Cross Politic will plug it.
Right.
I know.
That's really smart.
Yeah. So whiskey. We'll plug whiskey, obviously.
Whiskey.
Whatever
and-
else.
Wait,
What are we doing?
I thought we weren't talking about
Kids'
that.
books and whiskey.
That's right.
This is a family show for all ages. Also, this show is brought to you by Logos Online
Speaking
School.
of whiskey for kids.
Logos Online School.
Yeah.
LogosOnlineSchool.com. I'd read you the whole ad, but Gabe didn't share it with me. I don't have permission to read it. So I'm just going to tell you, LogosOnlineSchool.com. Logos Online School is a school that is committed to offering online Christ-centered classical education for grades 7 through 12 that's both affordable and accredited. It's Christian, classical, affordable, accredited, and is built around relationships, online classes meeting daily Monday through Thursday with outstanding teachers who take a personal interest in your student. It's almost like I read an
that's
actual
really good. Yeah,
ad.
that was good.
I just made that up.
you make that up for real?
But it's actually outstanding teachers, not outstanding.
Right. That's right. Thank you. Thank you for
Don't slur that, all right?
And I'm not feeling nauseous.
LogosOnlineSchool.com.
Sign up now,
Okay.
all right?
Well, now what happened this week?
So it's Pride Month,
What's that mean?
and yeah, I know. Seriously. It means
What are we proud about?
Romans 1 month.
Proud of our shame.
Yeah, exactly. So Trump tweets out this week. He says, as we celebrate LGBT Pride Month and recognize the outstanding contributions LGBT people have made to our great nation, let us also stand in solidarity with many LGBT people who live in dozens of countries around the world, countries worldwide that punish, imprison, and even execute individuals.
So that was Trump
Tweeting that out.
celebrating LGBT Pride Month.
And then he was in Britain, in UK,
Yeah.
right? UK, Britain.
It's all, yeah.
It's all the same.
Not Europe.
We're sorry.
It's not all the same.
And oh man, I forget his name. The liberal CNN guy was interviewing him. I forget his
Piers.
name. Yeah, Piers Morgan. Yep, was interviewing him about transgender in the military.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you about your military. Is this week you tweeted your support for the LGBT community around the world where they're being persecuted or excluded.
It's terrible.
Which does prompt the obvious question. If you feel that protective of the LGBT community, why did you feel the need to ban transgender people from serving in the US military?
Because they take massive amounts of drugs. They have to. And also, and you're not allowed to take drugs. You know, in the military, you're not allowed to take any drugs. You take an aspirin. And they have to. After the operation, they have to. They have no choice. They have to. And you would actually have to break rules and regulations in order to have that.
But the cost of the medication is minuscule compared
Well,
to the
you
overall
also-
budget,
yeah, but
right?
you
Well,
also-
accept that.
you also
But
had
the
the
US
cost of that.
military spends a lot more money, for example, on giving Viagra to service men and women, or service men.
I didn't know.
I didn't know that. He said, I didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Wow.
We have the military apparently funding Viagra for a bunch of men in the military, as opposed to it. One of the things that kind of struck me about this was you have this. Trump's answer was actually he kind of went to medical. He kind of went to drugs. That was his answer, and that's not going to last.
It won't last until an actual war. One of the essential things here is military efficiency, and so Christians object to trannies in the military on moral grounds, and they object to us giving societal approval to that.
Right.
But there is a pragmatic argument against women in the military in combat roles. Right. It disrupts military efficiency. The job of the military is to kill people and break things.
Right.
And you want to be efficient in doing that.
Right.
And so there is a moral argument. There's also a pragmatic argument. Trump can't make the moral argument because he doesn't have the resources, he doesn't have the framework or the worldview.
That's right.
There's a worldview. There's an argument to be made there, but the argument that he did make is not nonsensical.
Right. Well, and actually, the argument that for women in the military being less effective, that's actually a biblical argument as well.
Yes.
The Bible itself says in several places in the Old Testament, the prophets say that armies of men that run away in cowardice and refuse to fight have become like women.
Right.
So the Bible itself says if a good way to lose a war is to have your military full of women.
Right.
So it's a biblical and a practical argument, and I think the same thing could be applied by analogy to the trannies, as you called them, I think, a minute ago.
Right. So what? How do we also think about like Trump's tweet about LGBT contributions apparently that they've made to the U.S.?
That was appalling. So he's celebrating something that ought not to be celebrated, but the homosexual world is still beyond angry with him anyway because they don't believe him. They don't.
Do you?
To me, it's a win.
Actually,
to me, it's a win-win.
Yeah.
No, I don't believe him.
I'm serious.
They don't believe him, and I think that he shouldn't have done that. But they don't believe him anyway, and I don't believe him because he's doing things like reversing the Obama policies on these issues. So they're calling him sort of a secular hypocrite. He's talking he's talking the secular talk.
Yeah.
Holding the flag, but he's not. No, he's not walking the walk.
What do you mean by win-win?
Well, it's a win because what Doug just said. No one believes him on that side, so he gains no fans, right? And he's actually just giving the bird to their god. He's burning fake incense, which to me is just hilarious because he doesn't gain anyone on that side. Everyone that loves Trump, it's purely pragmatic. We're getting stuff done. He gets to write that and say, "What are you talking about?"
And he gets to check that box.
Yeah, checks that box, and behind the scenes, he's doing every single thing to unravel what Hillary would have had done in 1 month.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So we don't. David's not here. We don't have the stinger to play it, but we got this great stinger. Hunger Games 2020 is kind of how we've been labeling the Democratic presidential race. It makes sense, survival of the fittest. Hunger Games, whoever's going to win,
they're killing each other.
We got this great stinger. I can't play it, but I can. What I can play is
if you want to see Chocolate Knox, just send in money.
Exactly.
Once
join the show.
He's actually in the back room.
This is what you want for the rest of the year. Don't send any money in.
Low
if you want to
production.
See changes, and if you want to see a pro-Trump guy on the show, this is what you're getting. Okay,
remember now.
That's great. That's great. So we got names for all the presidential candidates. We got Breadline Bernie, which is
people
one of my
were
favorites.
upset at you. By the way, can we just break for a moment? Like I saw people being very offended that you were getting to this level of name calling of the Democratic candidates.
I missed that.
Really?
Did you really?
I did.
I didn't know either.
Oh yeah,
I did.
No.
So I did.
Like brother, starting with brother. That's when you know you're in trouble, right? When someone says brother,
Dear brother.
Dear brother, I love you, brother.
It's
It grieves me to write this.
But all your friends become like they're in seminary. That first letter you get from your friend in seminary, brother, I pray for you daily. You're like, Steve?
And at lunch.
Right. Wow, okay, beseech comes out. But no, I saw people like really upset at you that you would get to this level of name calling, but I just wasn't sure if you were aware.
What are some of the other names? I want to repeat them now.
Breadline Bernie. We got Pinko Pete.
Pinko Pete.
We got Incompetent Inslee.
Which I think you could have a way better one for Pete, but it's still a family
Okay, keep
show.
going.
But go on.
Pride Month.
Look, now we have messages up on the back screen.
Oh. You want to take that down?
DarrenDoan@gmail.com is right there.
Oh, that's what happens when Cock Knox is not.
Coop says keep rolling.
My,
People are like writing down
my
your
social
emails.
security is 563-81-6140.
911. All right, let me get to this. So we got John Hinkle-Hooper. He's in.
I lost audio. See, I got headphones. I can't hear, but go on.
Oh, it's probably me now.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
On my line.
Okay. John Hinkle-Hooper, he's running Hinkle-Looper.
What's his nickname?
Hinkle-Looper, whatever his last name is.
Hinkle-Looper?
Hinkle-Hooper, I think is what it is. I don't know. Okay. And he was the former governor or current governor of Colorado, and he stepped into the race.
Okay.
And he's at this talk.
Democrat?
Yeah, he's Democrat.
Democrat.
Anyways, I'm going to roll the clip. This is just.
We know it is absolutely essential to beat Donald Trump, but it is not sufficient. We must address the divisions that are tearing us apart. We must tackle the kitchen table challenges facing Americans. But let me be clear. If we want to beat Donald Trump and achieve big progressive goals, socialism is not the answer. I was reelected in a purple state in 2014, one of the worst years for Democrats in a quarter century. If we're not careful, we're going to end up helping to reelect the worst president in American history.
So the thing that strikes me is the level of public discourse. If we want to achieve big progressive goals, socialism is not the answer.
Right.
What that is translation. If we want to achieve socialism, socialism is not the answer.
Right.
What does progressive mean?
Right. Or if we want to achieve socialism, we can't call it socialism.
We can't call it, right.
We have to keep saying it's not socialism.
But you can now. But you can. I mean, that's
what the booing.
You can in the Democratic primaries.
Right.
You must in the Democratic primaries. You must avow socialism.
Yeah.
And that's the buzzsaw he ran into.
Yeah.
But everybody, left, right, and moderate in the Democratic Party is a socialist.
Yeah.
They're all socialists. They're just slow motion, high speed socialists.
They're fighting over whether it should be 65 miles an hour or 75 miles an hour.
Right.
Everybody's going to socialism.
And would you say that the Republican Party are just really, 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 really slower socialists?
I would say 2/3, 60% of the Republicans are just really slow motion socialists.
Got it.
Right.
And then the Freedom Caucus, or there's some.
There's still some legitimate conservatives.
There are true conservatives in the Republican Party, but they're also slow motion socialists in the Republican Party.
So how are you thinking about this whole Democratic? I remember back in the late '80s, early '90s. I remember saying, thinking that Democrats were socialists even at that time. And
Right.
I'm in high school, and I'm like, that's just socialism. And the Democrats would get offended. No, we aren't socialists. And now, of course, Bernie's a Democratic socialist. And the adoption of the Democrats, they're adopting things at 90 miles an hour now.
Right.
Everything from the homosexuality of Obergefell, and then 2 months later after Obergefell fell, they are adopting the transgender movement.
And hardcore abortion.
Right.
So it used to be safe, legal, rare.
Yep.
We want abortion safe, legal, and rare back in
right.
Bill Clinton's day.
Right.
Yep.
But now it's
Well, Illinois pushed back the partial birth abortion ban.
Right.
In Illinois, they repealed it, or in the process of trying to repeal it. I mean, it was even that was an issue that Republicans and Democrats at least could say, like, at least let's not do that.
Right.
Let's not be that barbaric.
That's a little inhumane.
And now the
late term was always like no, nobody wants that.
right.
Yeah.
But now it's like all the way through 9 months.
Baby out, let's kill it.
And you all saw Joe Biden just flipped on the Hyde Amendment thing. So
In 24, talk about adopting something.
in less than 24 hours. I mean, the same thing, the boo machine that we just saw, that whole machinery, like was it like 40 years he was a supporter of the Hyde Amendment,
Right.
which required no federal funding for abortions.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
And 24, in 24 hours previously,
Right.
he's still affirming that, no, that's my stance. And then like 16 hours later, he comes out reversed.
and flips on
Right.
the Hyde Amendment.
And that tells you that all of his poll numbers in the Democratic primary
Yeah.
are helium filled. Right.
yeah.
That was not the move of a strong, secure candidate.
Yeah.
That was the move of someone who knows that his mountain of support is made out of cotton candy.
Yeah. Right. So he's got to play to his base.
And-
He must.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And you wouldn't. No one should want to be elected or supported by that kind of support, right? I mean, to be able to constantly have to be able to flip in 24 hours to make sure you keep your poll numbers up and your base up. No one wants that.
I think Democrats are smart enough to know that within the next couple of months, because they know right now that they can't beat Trump. It's impossible, and
You heard it here.
and they know that,
Yeah.
and so
Barring nuclear war or
president being shot.
the Second Great
Yeah.
Depression, or
Yes.
Yeah.
if there's a
Yes.
but
Yes.
if things stand the way
Yes.
they are now,
fair enough.
He doesn't have a chance.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what they'll do if we think things are crazy right now,
Yeah.
we don't know what's going to happen because they're going to flip this party so quickly to get ready.
Yeah.
For 6 years from now,
Right.
It's going to be crazy.
Yeah. And don't worry, though. New York is about to become the first state to ban cat declawing
Yeah.
Right.
because of their compassion.
Yeah,
I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know
not
how
their
I'm closing
body.
out this
It's
segment.
not their body.
But we're going to come back with another great conversation.
David, come back.
Help,
David, come back.
Become a member now.
You don't understand.
Hi, I'm Andrew Klavan, host of The Andrew Klavan Show on the Daily Wire. I'm going to be speaking up in the chimney of northern Idaho this summer at Called Conference, which runs from July 15th through the 19th. I'll be giving my testimony, which is Christianese for the story of my conversion to Christianity, as detailed in my book, The Great Good Thing. And I'll be talking about why Christians should be involved in writing movies, like the movie I wrote, the Gosnell movie. Called Conference is a worldview conference for Christian high schoolers. They want to challenge you to become the next generation of cultural leaders. So if you want to register, go to www.calledconference.ninja. I hope to see you there.
Give me some volume. No, not that one.
Is that the wrong one?
That one.
It turns out David does a lot.
He does a lot.
He knew what he was doing. David knew what he was doing.
Welcome back to Cross Politic on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. We're grateful to have Doug Wilson in the studio with us and Darren
Right.
Doan.
Thank you.
And David, where are you?
Help!
Chocolate
Again.
Knox.
Hey,
Bring him back.
Want to remind you
I
that
just did a good fade out.
good job. Bunch of us are doing same page summer. We're reading through the New Testament together, and you can find this at christkirk.com /
I'm in it.
Bible reading.
I'm in it.
You're doing it?
I'm
Yes.
doing it.
All reading it together, the New Testament together. We've been cranking through the Gospel of John.
Yep.
And also, there's a Facebook group for men
Yep.
and for women if
I'm
you
in
want to
it.
jump in and ask questions and watch Darren. What were you doing on that video?
I was in the spirit. I was caught up.
There you go.
I was caught up. I was on the guitar keyboard. I was just I was just
There you
trying
go.
to,
So Netflix becomes the first major Hollywood studio to pledge to fight Georgia's abortion bill.
This can be a hot topic.
So Atlanta and the surrounding area is an enormous filming Hollywood studio multiplex, I hear.
Yes, it is.
And so they began rattling their saber after the Georgia heartbeat bill was passed, saying, we'll have no part in this. And there were various actors and actresses, of course, also saying, I'm not going to film there. And
They do believe in church discipline.
yeah, right. Oh, yes.
Just wrong church.
Yes, and so at the same time, so they're playing a certain kind of boycott game.
Right.
I think city of LA banned official government travel to Georgia already. So they're practicing church discipline on the left.
Right.
And of course, then meanwhile, a lot of conservatives say, hey, two can play this game. We're not going to give you our money anymore. And so there have been a number of people then saying, hey, we're canceling Netflix. We're going to cancel Hulu, or at least we're going to threaten to. Our friend Marcus Pittman, did he create redpetition.com?
Redpetition.com.
Redpetition.com, where he's encouraging conservatives to cancel their Netflix subscriptions and send a message to liberal businesses about how much their support for abortion will cost them. I checked this morning. The total number was a little over 300,000.
Yeah.
He's got this running tally.
In 3 days.
That's pretty good.
3 days.
So what do you guys think about this and similar tactics?
So you have to distinguish with boycotts. You have to distinguish between boycotting as a moral necessity and boycotting as a tactic.
Right.
Okay.
So there's a certain kind of boycott that would be required because it's like it's porn or prostitution.
Yeah, you shouldn't get your Starbucks coffee from the brothel, because it's got the best baristas in town.
Because that would be immoral. You're participating in immorality.
At some level, you have to participate in the immorality in order to function in this transaction.
Got it.
And so you should refuse to do that regardless of how effective it looks or how stupid it looks or how it hurts your business. It's a moral necessity.
Got it.
It's Daniel refusing to eat the king's meat in Babylon. I'm sorry, my conscience doesn't permit me to glorify what you're doing. That's where the cake bakers and the florists and the photographers are.
Right.
It's not that they're refusing to participate in an economy together with homosexuals.
Right.
It's the particular transaction that they're being asked to conduct.
Right. The florist in Washington, for example, who just lost again in the Washington Supreme Court.
Surprise. Shocker.
She was making flower bouquets for homosexual couples for years.
Right.
With no problems. It was when she was asked to do the bouquet for their wedding that she refused.
I know one of those guys. I worked with them in my previous life.
Wow.
Which is trippy.
So that's the moral necessity. You abstain from a transaction, and it doesn't. And basically, how effective it is irrelevant if it's a moral question.
Right.
Okay. But if it's a tactical question, that's a separate issue. And Jesus says that before you try to conquer an army, count the number of troops you've got.
Right.
Before you build a tower, make sure you've got the resources.
Right.
So if a boycott takes off, let's say the 300,000 grows to 300 million because there's a groundswell of support, then I would say that was a shot well taken. It was good.
Yeah.
You made Netflix sit up and pay attention.
Right.
But it's a tactical thing. It's not a moral thing.
Right.
Particularly if you organize the boycott of Netflix on Facebook. Facebook is as bad as Netflix by any number of metrics.
Certainly.
So it's not a moral question. It's simply a tactical.
Yep.
So the question that ought to arise in your mind is: do I trust this general? Do I think this is a wise play? Do I think we can pull it? Do I think we can pull it off? So the illustration I use is: if you live in a small town, 600 people, and the one gas station there starts selling pornography behind the counter, and everybody in town gets mad and says, "We're just going to get our gas 5 miles away at Billy Bob's station and not at yours."
Right.
And so he stops carrying the porn. You effectively kept porn out of your small town. That was really good.
And it's a small scale, and so
you can do it.
It's feasible.
You can measure your effectiveness. You can see if you did good.
Right.
But let's say the guy who organized that boycott in a small town because they're carrying porn drove over to Seattle and he had to gas up. It's no compromise for him to gas up at a station that sells pornography. Because it's not a moral issue. This is a tactical. This is a tactical issue.
Right. So we're not saying that to be a true believer you have to cancel Netflix.
Correct.
Because that would be the situation.
Because the Apostle Paul doesn't think about this. Is it lawful to buy a pot roast in Corinth from a pagan temple? Paul says yes. Right. Paul says that you want to be careful who you eat it with. You want to be careful of the weaker brother. But the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Right. So the meat is not demon possessed, and there's nothing wrong with the meat. So if I go to Safeway and buy something, I don't have to worry about whether the board of directors of Safeway are born again or whether they're going to do good things with the money.
Right.
The Bible does not say that it's a sin to participate in an economy dominated by sinners.
Right.
It's just that's and so a lot of people think that it is. A lot of Christians think it is. I can't pay taxes because some of my taxes go to support this and that. And
Right.
the other. Or I can't stay at Marriott because of the Mormons or because whatever.
What?
They own Marriott.
Now you can't go to Marriott. No.
This year's going to be even harder.
Darren, were you even
Doug,
listening?
wait, hold on.
I was. That's how I knew what he said.
So Doug, back up to your initial kind of principle on being tactical and maybe Netflix is a big kahuna in the room, and if you get up to 300 million, then then maybe you actually said something and they've listened. Now I'm King David. Fixing getting my stones, and I'm fixing to go face Goliath.
Right.
Would you use that same argument to King David?
Yeah. So I'm not saying the argument says don't. I'm not saying to Marcus that was a wrong thing to do. I'm saying, well, let's see. Let's give it it might be a good thing. Might be a
good
thing.
stone to throw or not.
Yeah. So David, when you're looking at great men of faith, Abraham sacrificing Isaac or David going out to face Goliath, from 50 yards away, faith looks almost exactly like presumption, right?
Yeah.
So there are people who overcome armies, they do great things, and it's faith, and you can see that they were honored by God, blessed by God, but that doesn't mean that it's automatically faith. So I'm just telling. This is not so much me as a critic in the bleachers saying boycotting Netflix is bad.
Right.
I'm saying just check your own resources. Jesus tells you to count your money before you build a tower. Right. Jesus says to count the troops before you go to battle. Think this through.
And David counted the rocks before he went to battle.
Yeah. And is this a strategic moment to be thinking along these lines? I mean, it seems like it is. I mean, when you have this, New York and Illinois and Maine passing these, we can kill the baby, even maybe after it's born kind of stuff.
Right.
And then the answer to that has seemingly been very obviously Alabama, Georgia,
Tennessee,
Louisiana,
Missouri,
all these southern and red states saying, not in our state you don't.
Right.
The forces are, the battle lines are being drawn.
Right.
Everybody's kind of the volume is increasing. It seems like a very strategic moment.
I saw a headline. Even if Roe v. Wade these are all obvious attempts to challenge Roe.
Yeah.
Okay. And someone argued, and I think this is exactly correct. Even if Roe is upheld in this next round.
Yep.
Even if Roe is
it
upheld,
goes back to the Supreme Court, it's upheld.
And they uphold Roe. Even with that being the case, the momentum is with the pro-lifers.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we should keep the pressure on.
Right.
And there is no constitutional requirement that if the Supreme Court decides Roe, that's not binding on other states.
Right.
That's just a signal to other states that the same thing's likely to happen to you when your case gets there.
Right.
But if 15 states pass these restrictive abortion measures, Alabama's is the best.
Right.
It's the most restrictive. If 15 states did that and sent them up to the Supreme Court one after another, what it is a showdown. And keep the pressure. I say keep the pressure on.
So that's the political side. But a lot of people want to get into this also in terms of the cultural side, which is what you're seeing with like the Netflix thing or with businesses and so on. What's that side look like? I mean, so we run the play, the political play, run the bills, but then it's also, Netflix saying we're going to pull out of Atlanta, and the liberals have been a lot better, or at least seem like they've been a lot more quick on the uptake in terms of throwing their cultural weight around. Right. How do Christians throw their cultural weight around?
Well, they have to grow a spine. So one of the things that happens is and this is a momentum. I think we're on the cusp of a momentum shift.
Right.
The reason Netflix can just assume and Google can just assume that we don't know anybody that voted Republican. So this is the way is the way the world is.
Right. Everyone must agree with me.
Everybody must agree, and just visualize some board of directors of some hot company saying we're going to do a gay-friendly day, or, we're going to join in Pride Day, and then 3/4 of the board of directors resign.
Yeah.
What? What?
Yeah.
Or no one in the company shows up the next day.
What just happened?
Yeah.
Well, basically, we have to get to the point where we realize that Vladimir Lenin, who I don't usually quote approvingly,
or John Lennon.
I don't quote anything that sounds like that.
Any of those
but
Lenins.
Lenin said, all you need is a committed 5%.
Yeah.
What you need is a committed 5%.
Yeah.
And so when the Christians get to that committed 5% and they become intransigent, right, where they just say, we're not going to cooperate with this.
Yeah.
Right.
We're not going along. We're not going quietly. I believe we have more than enough ingredients for a committed 5%.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing some of that develop.
Right. Darren,
Wow, that's
you're
really good.
you're from LA.
Yeah.
You're part of the
You're part of the problem.
Yeah. I was for a while.
And you've been in the industry.
Yeah.
You were in the industry as an unbeliever, and then you've told your testimony before on the show. What do you see in all this? What is it? What's tactical for Christians? Christians, especially who care about the abortion issue, they want to see abortion ended. They have energy, they have enthusiasm, they see this happening. They want to get to that 5%. What do you tell them?
My first other side of the coin of what everyone's been saying is with Marcus Pittman's petition. The way I look at the world, he's just established himself as a major player. That we are looking at what's the next 10, 15, 20 years going to look like.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to be dead that's been leading the Christian march in this direction. So if we go back all the way to, the Gary Norths and the who was before Gary North? I always forget.
Rush Dooney.
Rush Dooney, right.
Yeah.
If we start with Rush Dooney and the Bonsons and all that, to
Hal Lindsey.
to the Sproles, in one to the Sproles, to the D. James Kennedys, to the Pipers, everyone's going to be dead within 15 years.
Yeah.
And
focus on families.
Maybe not 15.
And my theory, and my theory has always been that Doug, as of right now, is the last man standing. And so what Doug is doing so everything Doug has done is what a lot of those guys didn't do. I mean, Sproul didn't get to a college until like the last 10 years of his life. Like maybe we should have a college.
Right.
So what Doug put into play. So Doug's written the playbook, and so what we're seeing right now, there's not a lot of them yet, but we're seeing people who are coming up right now who are establishing themselves as players. Marcus Pittman is a real player, and people are going to laugh at like 300,000 compared to like whatever.
Right.
But they laughed at Doug for the 4 people that showed up to Logos.
Right.
The first year. Or New St. Andrews.
Four at New St. Andrews the first year. Okay. 19 for Logos the first year.
Fair enough.
Right, Terry.
Fair enough. Yes.
Right.
Well, and to your point here too,
That 5%, that Lenin's 5%.
on the macro level, you think this is the last generation where the baby boomers are going to influence in a significant way the presidential race.
Thank God.
Right? You got, Well, I don't know because look at AOC. Look at the next generation Democrats. They're crazy.
But AOC is, look at where she comes from.
Yeah,
right.
A little niche New York suburb that votes liberal and got tired of the staunch Democrat there. Yeah,
that district would have elected Trotsky.
Les Mis would be a national holiday. But I just got back on Facebook 6 months ago, and so I'm reconnecting with all my high school friends.
Isn't everybody leaving Facebook right now?
Not at all. Not at all. And so I just got back on.
Why?
Well, because it's the only way to be effective if you're trying to grow anything in this day and age.
Okay.
So if you're not on social media, you don't exist. So getting back on, and then when the platforms change, you just go there.
Yeah.
Not a big deal.
Right.
Everyone's got to be prophetic.
Not Facebook the company, but this.
Right. Yes.
Social media.
Yes.
It's like A-track to cassette to
wherever
CD.
it moves, wherever the attention is, that's where you want to be. But I'm back on, and I'm hooking back up with all my friends from high school and the gnarliest dudes I knew who were dealing drugs with me, who were doing crazy stuff, or they're all saved.
Really?
Wow.
Really?
They're all saved.
Wow.
And I'm finding dudes that even don't know, 12 years ago on Facebook, and I got on Facebook, and it was the same people still trying to sell me weed when I got on Facebook. I'm like, I need to get off Facebook. Okay. You know what I mean? And I got off. I get back on. People are saved.
Yeah.
People are conservatives.
Maybe you should get back off again.
Yeah, exactly. No, my work's done.
More people get saved when you get off.
So, I mean, I just think that, again, this myth that we're somehow 50-50 in this country, what social media platforms are doing is they're actually exposing that it's not a 50-50 country on abortion. I think it's 80-20.
And it sounds like what you're saying, too, put both of what you guys are saying together is, so Christians need to have a spine, they need to have a backbone. And so you're saying, though, basically just be there, be whoever God has made you to be, your business, your family, your educational ventures, your neighborhood, and just be Christian confidently.
Right.
Just joyfully, cheerfully. No, we don't kill babies. Right. No, there's just boys and girls. No, we only have men and women get married, and they stay married, and they have babies, and they baptize them.
Yes. That's it.
And we win.
That's it.
And we're winning.
That's it.
So up next, Michael Dougherty. Michael Dougherty, National Review columnist, coming up.
Logos Online School is your affordable partner in classical Christian homeschooling, offering live teacher-led instruction 4 days a week to students in grades 7 through 12. Our experienced, enthusiastic teachers provide instruction in math, science, literature, history, languages, Bible, apologetics, rhetoric, government, and economics. Find out why more and more Christian homeschoolers are turning to Logos Online School for the education of their children. Go to logosonlineschool.com today.
Guys in a room.
Welcome back to Cross Politic. David, where are you?
Help!
Marcus Pittman, please put something together to raise money for Chocolate Knox.
Join the club, obviously.
Right. With us on the line for this third segment, we are very thankful to have Michael Brendan Dougherty. I'm not going to try to say it all Gaelic-like.
Dougherty.
Okay, there you go. He's a senior writer at National Review. He previously wrote for The Week, The American Conservative. His work has also appeared in the New York Times Magazine and ESPN Magazine. And he's the author of a brand new book, My Father Left Me Ireland, An American Son's Search for Home. There it is right there on the table. Michael, thanks for being on Cross Politic.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
So we want to talk to you a little bit about this recent intramural, in-house, conservative, I don't know what we want to call
Scuffle?
Scuffle.
Tiff, pillow fight?
Fight? No, not a pillow fight.
Okay.
Pillow fighting pirates?
Yeah, right. That's what I was trying to tie in, but Doug didn't go for it. Yeah. So a couple weeks back, Sohrab Ahmari, he's a editor at New York Times. Is that right?
I'm going to say
no,
yes.
New York Post.
New York Post, okay. Tweeted, if you can't see why children belong nowhere near drag with its currents of transvestic fetishism, we have nothing to say to each other. We are irreconcilably opposed. There's no polite David Frenchian third way around the cultural civil war. Ooh. The only way is through. That was May 26th. And thus began this intramural discussion over the nature of what we're fighting for in the culture wars. Are we, and my take is, are we fighting for a distinctively Christian public square that makes room for freedom of conscience and the pursuit of happiness, a Christian public square that would make room for what we might call pluralism light, maybe? Or are we fighting for a purely secular, neutral public square, a pluralist public square that makes room at the table for Christianity? As one perspective among many. So, Michael, is that how you see the debate, or do you see it differently?
I think the debate has spiraled out because Congress is doing nothing, Trump is traveling. The debate has spiraled out into everyone's hobby horses.
Right.
Beyond, I mean, I think this is like a full employment act for conservative writers now. But
job security.
But yeah, I mean, I think you've highlighted it well about what the ends are. But I think I think that's clarifying, because a lot of what the gas and smoke billowing out of this debate has been talking about the means rather than the ends. And maybe that's why it's not been as sharp or as clear as it should be. So essentially, Sohrab Ahmari said essentially that if by liberal principles you mean we have to consent to drag queens in the public library teaching our kids, then to hell with liberalism. And David French has replied manfully, well, these are laws that this is a framework that protects us. And if you give the state the power to crush, Sacramento's library against the will of Sacramento's citizens and people and the institutions that have authority there to have allowed this, then you are creating an environment where we're going to be crushed, because essentially we're a minority. And, I think it's also been clouded by the fact that, in my own personal assessment, I think David French has done a lot of good work in courtrooms, real work, fighting and making achievements where possible. And I'm very grateful for that work. And if you're conservative, I think, one of the number one things you should have is gratitude for what is good. So I have been personally grieved by my two friends going at each other like this. But that's where it stands. Ahmari was making a more philosophical point that I think has to be discussed, which is, is what we mean by liberalism a form of autonomy and self-definition that necessarily excludes a Christian public square?
Yeah.
And that's right. So that is where I think it stands right now.
Could you flip it around and say that a harmonization or a peace offering would be to say that a distinctively Christian public square would be classical liberalism, the way it functioned prior to all this craziness that's descended upon us? So a response.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
I think you're right. I think I had a discussion on National Review's The Editor's podcast, and they were trying to narrow it down, and they were saying their point to me was you are the fear that's driving Ahmari and others like myself is partly that we feel we have lost what they called the cultural backstop.
Right.
If the founders created this framework in which a Christian people could order the public square themselves, now that we are less of a Christian people, which if you look at the Barna survey head counts of how many people actually go to church, you can't argue that there is less practice of the faith in America now than there was previously. Then yeah, and that's been a point David has leaned on, which is that, okay, if we dispense with the normal rules of engagement that we've had, this liberal framework, we're going to be losers on the end of this.
But in order to fight for religious liberty, so what we're up against is this: religious liberty is itself a religious value, and it's not a religious value for all religions. Right. So,
Islam.
Saudi Arabia does not value religious liberty the way we do. So, if religious liberty is a religious value, and not all religions have that value, then that is a stumper for classical liberalism that wants to be secular.
Right.
So, if you want religious liberty long run, you've got to have Jesus.
Well, and not only that, but there's also just the social history and fact that not every religion conceivable could be practiced legally in America, right? Yes. You can conceive of all sorts of rights, RITES, that would violate what we take to be our RIGIHTS.
Yeah.
And even further, I'm telling tales of the school, but
Go ahead.
at National Review in our office a little bit. We ended up having a fight about the Glorious Revolution because Amari and I, being Roman Catholics, our concern is maybe not religious liberty per se, but we would refer to as the liberty of the church, which is a slightly different concept. Though I think America has proved a compatible republic for which Protestants and Catholics can share, not only with each other but with others beyond us.
I'm the least educated on this subject in the room, and so my sincere question would be, based on how this country was set up, we have the Constitution,
right?
You're
more educated than most, right there.
Okay.
Good start.
Does Islam compete or go against the Constitution? So can Islam be in America and still be under the Constitution, or does it rub against the Constitution? My question is, as one that's not that educated in this area, we can talk about religious freedom. So I'm asking,
what about Islam?
What about Islam? Does it have to submit itself to the Constitution? And if it does it submit itself to the Constitution? Anybody?
I mean, I'm not an Islamic scholar or theologian. I mean, to me, a lot of this is judged by the proof in the pudding.
Right.
In a sense, I've been asked during these debates, essentially, what argument would I have other than the neutrality of the state for defending the existence of my church in this state? And I said my argument would be that if you point to, say, pornography and what it produces, which is, basically a form of human slavery for the participants that make it, and then for the onanists who view it. And then you point to my church, and when you see us practicing our faith, we produce hospitals, charities, religious services, and mercy being given out to sinners. One is good for this republic, and one is obviously bad. And to say that there's no way for the law to recognize or distinguish between them is a form of insanity. And it would be a form of insanity to the founders.
Yeah. And if I could tag on to that and give another example that I think everybody can see, is that Muslims could come to America. Let's say make America an ideal Christian republic. Muslim could come here to go to Disneyland, or to be a merchant or something, sell his goods. What he couldn't do if we were an ideal republic is come here and have his marriage to his 4 wives recognized.
But could he set up a mosque?
I would say not a minaret.
What do you mean? What's a minaret?
Switzerland just banned minarets where the calls to prayer are issued.
Right.
That's church bells would be legal. Muslim calls to prayer would not be, because the public space is not neutral. Right. So as soon as you make the public space neutral, and the county courthouse neutral, you've got to be good with polygamy. You just have to be good with polygamy.
Or transvestitism or transfigurations or trans whatevers, all the trannies.
Yep.
And
old school.
And the LGBT, everything. You have to be good with all of that.
Right, because basically I think we're living in God's reductio ad absurdum of secular classical liberalism. Huh. Look, you can't pretend that that one wife or 4 wives,
right?
He's got to break a certain way.
So you're saying that in a Christian republic, a Muslim could have his mosque, his church service, but couldn't have a public manifestation of that church service resonate in the square.
Yeah. Basically, we are a Christian country. We're not going to bind your conscience. You can continue to believe what you want to believe. You can pray as you want to pray. We're not going to bind anybody's conscience. But our laws and our public space are under the lordship of Christ.
Now, when I was listening to the National Review Editors podcast yesterday, Michael, it seemed like there was a couple places where Charles Cook, who I think is your boss, was raising the concern of, sort of like, so what are you going to do? And I think several of them said, so what are you going to do? And at one point, somebody raised some crazy website that apparently likened Amari's view to like ISIS or something like that. And Cook was clear and said, I don't think he's proposing anything close to that, but he did leave room to say, I think that maybe he left himself open to that slander, because if you're going to enforce your faith, then how are you not going to be coercive? Is the fear? The fear is, we're at least sliding down this coercive path. We're on a slippery slope to.
But has any culture anywhere on the face of the planet, anywhere throughout all of history of time, never enforced their faith?
Well, that's one question, right? Is the neutrality, supposed neutrality of the public square, real? Is it real? Is it possible? And if it is it also coercive as well?
Right.
And is there an example?
That's a great great way of articulating that question.
And coercion is inescapable. So a society is a coercive collective endeavor. So we coerce people who steal bicycles. We coerce people who rape and steal. Coercion is what a society does. So it's not whether we coerce; it's which people we coerce
and what's guiding
and what standard.
Yep.
By what standard do we?
Right.
How do we? What standard do we apply?
That's really good.
How do we do it, and to whom do we do it?
Michael,
I want to add to the list there that Pastor Wilson made. It's also a prudential decision, right? I mean, there's also, a magistrate has to make a prudential decision about how extreme to go in enforcing this.
Sure.
Right. I mean, so we all here, to take the easiest example, we all believe that the public authority and the society have not only a right but a duty to enforce laws against murder.
Right.
But we make prudential decisions we do make prudential decisions about how to do that make enforcing the law harder for us. For instance, we have civil rights, we have attorney-client privilege. In California, at least for now, we have clergy privilege, where Catholic priests are not forced to break the seal of confession for. So we have these civil rights. There are limits. We don't install a surveillance society to algorithmically pick up murderers by using computer code to study security cameras that cover every corner of the United States, inside and outside. So there are also prudential things, and I think the fear among some is, I think the small L liberal mind, I think, does have a hard time, or has a tendency, when it's not elevated by other principles, whether religious or Republican or classical Republican, it has a tendency to see any question of where the state takes a side as permission for the state to go as far as possible and inflict any tyranny to achieve that end. So if we say we don't want smut merchants, we don't want pornography, they'll say, well, you're saying that the government can tell us where to point our cameras? Well, no, and not in every. In most circumstances, we don't say to laws against murder, oh, you're saying the government can tell me where to point my knife? That is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think it's a category
error. The law isn't coming in
categorical error.
Yeah. Now, Michael,
the law isn't coming into an effect when I run my knife through a slice of chicken breast.
Right.
It does when I run it through a human breast.
Right. Yeah. Now, Michael, where would you fall on this? I mean, would you advocate for a Christian society, a Christian, in name government and nation?
I mean, yes, but the question is the means to achieve that, and also your concern of what is the United States now.
Yeah. So, yes. Michael, if I could go ahead.
So I would say I am aiming for this. Whether that results, I don't see any immediate prospect, however, of a confessional American state.
Yeah.
So I kind of don't even permit myself to think that far ahead.
Let me ask this. I've suggested.
However, wait, just one last thought before I lose it. However, in a sense, the United States was not a confessional state in the way traditionally understood. Like,
right.
For a time, Ireland's constitution still has a preamble attributing all authority to the Most Holy Trinity.
Right.
The United States never had that as part of its
Constitution. Was ratified. It was ratified in the year of our Lord, 1789.
Right. I mean, it doesn't quite say who the Lord is, and we know that the writer of the Declaration, the Declaration was no aid to his orthodoxy.
Yeah, right.
Or his bloodlust against Catholics in France. But so you might say, though, I don't know if you would agree with this, or you might agree with this even more, that when people arrived in America in the 19th century or even well into the 20th century, that the public square itself, by its character, confessed to the lordship of Christ. Maybe you don't feel that way.
I think it did.
I think we did. Yeah.
Jefferson wasn't at the Constitutional Convention, and when they adopted the Constitution, 50 of the 55 men there were Trinitarian Christians.
Weren't they Presbyterians?
Well, a bunch were, and when the Constitution was ratified, 9 of the 13 colonies had established state churches. So,
yes.
9 of the 13. So we know that whatever the Constitution, and the last one went out in the 1830s. So that arrangement went on for decades after the Constitution was adopted, which means that what they were doing is they didn't want a church. The First Amendment didn't want a Church of the United States the way you have a Church of Denmark or a Church of England. They didn't want a federal church,
an established
federal church,
right,
that Congress could establish. But they did allow for state churches,
right.
So the Congregational Church was the Church of Connecticut. You had this all through the colonies, and so that was the atmosphere that everybody was breathing when the Constitution was adopted
and ratified,
and ratified,
right.
So whatever else it is, if we made the Presbyterian Church the Church of Idaho, whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, it wouldn't be an unconstitutional idea.
And it wouldn't conflict with, like, let's say, a national church of the United States.
Well, it would. So that's why they didn't want a national church. If you have a national bird, it doesn't really cause wars if the states have their state bird, or a national song and the state song, or the national flower and the state flower.
Right.
But if you have a national church and you have a state church that's a different one, you're just asking for
conflict.
You're just asking for conflict. Yep. So we were a federation of sovereign states. They wanted the established religion to be at the state level because we were a federation.
Right.
We weren't a nation.
Right.
Yeah.
Michael, how does that rub against kind of the Catholic view, that the Catholic view of the church, and what it means kind of for a national church and local state churches?
Well, listen, the Catholic Church's view, and articulated especially strongly in the 19th century, right, is that we champion the social kingship of Christ, and that corporate bodies, social subjects, also have a duty to confess the truth of where authority comes from in this universe.
Uh-huh.
So we do believe that. In the particular history of the founding, one of the complaints in the Declaration of Independence was the Quebec Act, which allowed free worship of Catholics in a neighboring territory in Quebec. So, there's a history, a little bit of a more complex history
right
here.
Yes.
My own view is that what was previously called Christendom still exists and still has what the French political writer Pierre Manette calls the Christian mark. And we may be less practicing, we may be backslidden, heretical, and fallen away.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at where, say, Islam rubs up heavily against one of these nations with a Christian mark, you start to see the character come out. So, for instance, there was a telling incident in 2015 in Germany, I thought, where women who were out celebrating New Year's were attacked by kind of immigrant Muslim gangs.
Right.
And this was hushed up by the German media. But what was telling about the incident, I thought, was that the mayor of Cologne, the city where this happened, a good liberal, suggested as a way of preventing this in the future that women in Cologne don't go out unaccompanied and that they don't go out wearing provocative or dress or anything like that. And that was interesting to me because it reflected conflicts that happened during the Crusades in the Crusader state, where Muslims were looking at Franks and saying, why do these men let their wives walk with their friends and other soldiers?
Right.
Why do women walk about freely in this way? And it reflects this Christian mark that Christian societies have women who can walk about freely and unaccompanied by their brother and father. And we have houses that are sociable and face the street and, in a sense, are sociable with each other.
Right.
Whereas in Islamic countries, you have veiled women and you have veiled houses. You have veiled gardens, usually. Mm-hmm. And the entrance to the house is veiled in a way. And so even Germany, which has abysmally low rates of church attendance and practice, it still bears a mark of its Christian of its Christian character. That's in my view.
And secular classical liberalism does not provide a tent that both those ways of living can fit under.
Right. Morality is inescapable. And there's no real such thing as neutrality or even secularism, so-called secularism, still has a morality.
Right.
All right. Well, this has been fun.
I'm going to do my best Knox closeout here.
Wait, hold on.
All right. Okay.
Michael, thank you for joining us. And make sure you go out and get Michael's book, My Father Left Me Ireland, Amazon, wherever good books are sold.
All right. If you aren't baptized, get baptized. If you are baptized, get married. If you're married, have a baby. If you have a baby, baptize the baby.
Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight,
laugh, and feast.
David, come home soon.